fun cinematic animations that we call Spuntniks, and these are kind of pranks in the story. And with iMessage, do you have an iPhone?
I don't. I've got a Pixel.
Pixel. So I'm sure they do a similar thing. But if I were to send my friend like a birthday cake, I can put these different animations in, and it's pretty fun in terms of sending balloons and firecrackers and different things. I thought, well, wouldn't that be cool if you were reading a book and you could show those animations? So as you're going through the IGIST app, along with the beautiful sci-fi photorealistic illustrations that we also have these really fun Easter eggs that we call Spuntniks, where as you're reading, different little animations come up throughout the story. Wow. And it makes for a really kind of fun, exciting experience for the reader.
So it sounds like I remember, and I mentioned briefly, I worked for the only remaining chain bookstore in the country for a long time, for 15 plus years. And one of the things that as even if adult book sales would go down, you would still have children's and teen books would always ramp up, or would continue. And it seems like there's the idea of, even if you would have somebody, I remember having a group of kids come into the store not even looking at each other. They would all be on their phones and everything, but then they would get to the books or they would get to the graphic novels or whatever, and there's still this desire to have something tangible, which is interesting to me as a concept that continues through. I think I have everything that I own musically on in my iTunes library as well, but I still have thousands of CDs and hundreds of records, and I have hundreds of books and film and all that. There's still something of holding something and being able to it's a completely you're talking about an immersive thing which involves the app and which involves the technological platform as well, but the actual act of reading, the actual act of holding something and paging through it is a completely, encompassing sensory experience and immersive as well. So it's I don't know where I was going with that other than it's a really cool thing that you did not, with your background, decide to focus solely on the technological presentation, but to provide the physical aspect as well.
So I kind of came up in Axon as a product manager, which is a discipline I'm sure you probably know around how do you kind of define customer requirements and really understand what's the problem that we're solving and then map that to hopefully a compelling technology solution. And a lot of that is around asking questions like how do you solve a problem? What are the things that are causing you, frustration? Is there ways that we can make it better? And you're kind of interviewing the user to see, what would delight them in an experience. And so a good way to do that is start with a minimum viable product, like a prototype, and then just observe how they do it and ask them questions. So we I had the first draft of the book and really a really rough version of the app. It wasn't nearly what it is today, but we brought in 100 different kids, ages like 10 to 17, and I gave them a copy of the book, and we gave them a copy of the app, and kind of gave them the IGIST pitch, and we said, hey, we want you to experience this, what do you guys think? What feedback do you have? And it was really cool. I didn't expect this. I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. Half of the people read the hard copy of the book, and half read it on the app. It was almost like split straight down the middle. It was pretty cool. It was also cool in that the majority of the people really kind of liked the idea of the reward system and the character cards. We got kind of positive affirmation on some of the features that we were building. What was really cool is 100% of the students said that they would refer to a friend, which is like a good indicator.
Yeah.
Hey, we're on to something that, we think people would like and enjoy.
Yeah, that's cool. So you had the opportunity to do the whole market research thing, and actually that's funny. It puts me in mind of a Simpsons where they have I think it's the people who produce Itchy and Scratchy have a whole bunch of kids in the room, and he's trying to figure out how to get people to stay interested in Itchy and Scratchy, and he's like ends up being, just tell me what you want. So this is you didn't. There's this concept of go big or go home, right? So again, I keep kind of trying to approach this as where your different decision points were. So you had this, as part of the patriarchy, you don't notice it, how unfair the system is until you have people who are outside of it, and there's no more compelling reason outside of your own experience than your children. So you had that compelling you to create something that you thought was not only of artistic merit, but something that was of social merit as well, and something that would be encouraging to women and young girls, right? So young girls in particular who are only have this example of the old white male, the long hallway of all old white males. So there's that impetus there. That's that decision point. Where is the decision point? And how was that conversation with your wife? With the, not only am I going to write a novel, but I'm also going to develop it into this entire experience. And by the way, in my already, packed schedule, I'm going to add on all of this time too.
Yeah. So I think going back to, there's this great, we did this, kind of IGIST show up in Salt Lake City at the Leonardo, Science Museum, which is a really cool science center there, and that's where Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, was from Utah, and so they've got this big kind of homage to him. And one of his quotes was, "Entrepreneurs aren't dreamers; they're doers." And I think it starts with just getting up every morning and putting the words on the paper. It's like the journey starts with one step. And you were sharing some of your experience around. I was asking, what was your genesis to start the podcast? And you said something to the effect of, I just felt like doing something. And I really think any major creative endeavor starts with saying, hey, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to start. And so that's kind of blocking out the time, getting in the routine, and exploring what comes from that creative pursuit. I do all of my writing in the morning, and then one day a week I'll have the kind of IGIST team over to my house for dinner. And I must admit, I have the coolest wife in the world that opens up our home, one night a week, and all these people come in, and we kind of, we call it a game jam, and we, have dinner and talk about, what's going on. It's a really, really fun experience. One other, key thing I would talk about as you go through the creative process is, you're definitely not going to please everybody, right? Everyone's going to go in and say, hey, I have this mental model of what good is. And that would be very different for somebody that loves, Shakespeare versus somebody that loves, Danielle Steele or everybody has different flavors. And I think putting yourself out there, you're going to have critics, and it's really tough in a creative endeavor in that this is like, you don't just wake up and jot down something. Like, this is years of work that you've poured into this. And, most people are learning and getting better as they go. And so any criticism of your passion feels like somebody stabbing you in the heart, right?
Of course.
But that you have to be willing to say, hey, I'm kind of, galvanizing myself to criticism. I'm going to put this creative project out there and see.
You build up the skin. Yeah.
But the flip side of that coin is if you find somebody that appreciates, the art that you've created, it's a very, very, exciting moment. We had done an event in Hawaii where one of the families drove from Lahaina all the way across the island, like 45 minutes to come see the IGIST presentation. And the kid was 12 years old, and his dad, kind of confided and said, look, I've never really been interested in books. I actually don't read anything. He said, I think it's really, really cool that my kid is excited to read this book. And so one thing that's been fun is because, it's got this kind of sci-fi modern appeal, just beautiful imagery, and we're doing this really unique new experience. It's appealing to, I think, kids that don't normally read. Like you're going to have the straight A student that kind of self-selects to read every book and immerse himself in books. But I think this is really meant to be something that's not for a small group. This is meant to be something where it's really accessible to lots of people, with the attempt that through a good story, they can say, hey, maybe I could, try to solve or invent something. My ultimate goal would be, we're at the 50-year anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And if you've seen the movie First Man or read the book, that was really an age of discovery where people were excited to be, sending a man to the moon. I mean, it's still very, very awesome to talk about it and relive those moments. I think we're living in a similar kind of age of discovery now where there's just this, reignition and re-excitement around exploring space. And we just had the article come out about
the black hole,
the first black hole, and, the privatization of space travel. And so wouldn't it be cool in 20 years if the first person that walked on the moon said to the cameras, this lady, says, hey, I read this book IGIST when I was, in middle school, and I thought it was cool. And so I it inspired me to be an astronaut. And, that's a pretty ambitious goal, but, I think one of our values at Axon is to aim far. And that's something that I really believe is important when you're going after, big, ambitious projects.
How did you put the team together, the creative team behind everything? That was it? Just did you float it out to some people that you knew, or put a call out, or for the idea, or how did the specific team selection, the people that you're working with, come together?
So IGIST is a novel, but as I thought about how we could bring in a really creative team, I've been really fortunate to work at Axon and be a part of building Axon and kind of creating, redefining and creating the values and the culture of the company and how we attract and retain talent. And having a strong mission is just really, really critical. And so my mission for IGIST is to inspire the future. And if you ask somebody, hey, do you want to work on something where we're going to inspire the future? The response has been amazing. Everybody that I've reached out to say, is this something that you would like to help or work on, has been very, very supportive. And it's really cool to, tell people, hey, we'd like to build like a, kind of combination of Harry Potter and Star Wars and reboot this Tom Swift series. And, my response has been people are really, really excited about it and have had people do a ton of ton of work just out of wanting to see the project be successful.
I would imagine that you're pretty adept at this, being, again,